Hi there. Recently, we have seen an influx of phone calls coming from folks living up in the mountains who are looking for a new homeowner's insurance policy. So today, I thought I would take some time and talk about a few things that can possibly help you when it comes time to purchase a new insurance policy for your home, or even if you're looking for an insurance policy for a new home purchase in a wildfire area. Before I really get into these tips, I'd like to explain what a wildfire area is. If you were to Google your street address and the satellite view looks like this behind me, chances are you're in a wildfire area. In fact, I'm willing to bet you dollars to donuts you're in a high wildfire risk area. So, what is a wildfire risk area? Well, a wildfire risk area is an area that is deemed high risk based on a few factors. And two of those factors that are very important that you must know if you live in the mountains are your wildfire risk score and your fire protection class score. Now, those are two different things that go into configuring the rate for your policy. Also go into configuring the eligibility for your policy. So let me explain what a wildfire risk score is. A wildfire risk score, simply put, is an analysis, a rating from 5 to 100 based on your distance to high-risk vegetation. So in other words, how close are you to the trees that will be set on fire? Okay? It contains a few other things such as slope, such as the slope of the mountain. If you're flat area down in, Central Valley in the middle of a suburb in a city, you're not going to have a very high wildfire risk score. This satellite view that you're looking at behind me is actually a satellite view of Mariposa, which is an extremely high wildfire risk score, amongst the highest, where it's extremely difficult to get insurance. So again, if your neck of the woods looks like this neck of the woods, you're a high wildfire risk score. Now, fire protection class, a little bit different, little bit more known amongst people when they're talking about homeowners insurance in the mountains. This is something a lot of people seem to be a little bit more familiar with. But your fire protection class score goes from 1 to 10. 1 being you live next door to the fire department and are surrounded by concrete and have no trees, with the fire hydrant in your front yard. Very few fire protection class 1s, even in a city. Most fire protection classes are 2. Fire protection class is determined by a few things. One of those things is how far is a fire hydrant to your home? How far in road miles? Cannot be as the crows fly, cannot be over the mountain, has to be driving road miles. If you're over a certain amount of miles, you're going to be a higher fire protection class. So kind of let me explain just briefly about that. So bear with me here. It used to be that if the fire department that was closest to your home was not a 24-hour manned fire department with staff on salary, and if it was not your assigned responding station, then it did not affect your fire protection score. Your fire protection score, you used to have a fully manned, staffed on salary fire department with firefighters, not volunteers, in under 5 road miles. Nowadays, they've kind of amended that a little bit. If you have a volunteer fire station that is less than 5 road miles from your home, they now will take that in consideration into your fire protection class. So if you're over 5 road miles, you're going to be a fire protection class 5 or higher. The further away, the higher that number, okay? Now, what it is based on, the fire protection class is based on, ultimately, bottom line, is how long will it take the fire department to get to you and put that fire out once it's been reported. So those are the two things that go into knowing whether you're a high wildfire risk, okay? Now, On to the things that can possibly help you. So I want to put out a little disclaimer. The tips that I'm about to give you will not guarantee you a lower premium. It is what it is. I would love to say to you that it is simple to find lower insurance premiums simply by searching the different companies. That's not the case. Unfortunately, insurance carriers right now, they're canceling, they're non-renewing, they're not writing new business, there are moratoriums. Those that are writing what's called a difference in condition policy, which requires a secondary California Fair Plan policy. You put those two policies together and you're looking at $3,000 or above for a homeowner's insurance policy. I mean, it just really is what it is premium wise. I would love to give you better hope than that, but unfortunately, wildfire scores being what wildfire scores are, insurance rates, if you live in the mountains, are unforgiving. I'm sorry. So for my disclaimer, these tips will not guarantee you a lower premium. These tips will not guarantee you will find a new policy. But what these tips will do is hopefully help you find the best policy at the best possible rate that you can get. So ultimately, what that's about is about letting the insurance company know that you've done everything in your power to mitigate that risk. Okay? So that's my disclaimer. So just know these are helpful things, not guaranteed things. So here we go. So tip number 1, if you already own a home in a wildfire area or you're purchasing a home in a wildfire area, one of the things that you want to do is reach out to your fire department. Like the first thing on your to-do list before unpacking that box of kitchen stuff, before putting your dishes away, go buy some pizza for your local fire department. Take it down there, meet the firefighters, and ask some questions, okay? Here are some questions that you can ask. These are the things that you need to know. These are the things that the insurance company wants to know about your property and its relationship to the fire department. You can ask these questions. How many fire trucks are there, and how many fire trucks would respond to your home if there were a fire? What kind of fire trucks are they? Are they pumper trucks? There's many different kinds of fire trucks. We think there's only one because we see, what we grew up with, the red truck with the ladder, right? There's actually more than one kind of fire truck. So you need to know what kind of fire truck they have and how many of them. You also need to know how many gallons of water each of those trucks can carry to your home. That's important because if you've only got one fire truck and it only has limited gallons of water, it might not put out the entire fire and they might have to call up for backup, which then slows the response time, thus making your fire protection class higher. You also want to ask, is this the assigned response station? So I've done, I wrote an article about this. Many times we think that any fire department will respond to us in a fire, and sadly that's not the case, especially up in the hills. So firefighters that are in a volunteer station, while we would like to think that they're going to jump out of their dinner table, head on over there and grab their gear and come put out our fire, the reality is volunteer firefighters have families and lives as well. And sometimes they can't get to their gear to get to you quick enough. Also, one of the things that I learned in talking to a lot of fire departments here in California is that there are tons of volunteers. We have more volunteers than we need. What we don't have is equipment. Volunteer firefighters typically buy their own gear. So learn all about the assigned response station for your property, because the assigned fire department might not have what it needs to adequately support your risk. The other thing is you want to ask, what is your PC class? Now here's what's great. As insurance agents, we can help you find out what your fire protection class is. We call it a PC, high PC class. But the fire department has that information and it's public information, so they can tell you what your ISO fire protection class is. And it's always helpful for you to know that. So tip number 2 for you is brush reduction certification programs. When you go down to the fire department, one of the things that you want to ask them is there a brush reduction certification program in place? What has been done to remove brush? So underwriting often requires that you, the homeowner, remove brush from your property up to a certain amount of feet. Sometimes it's 250 feet, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. I very rarely see less. But they all require, hey, you got to trim those tree branches up 14 feet high from the ground, 250 feet from around the property. They ask for those things. Well, a brush reduction certification program, the community works with the fire department and they clear brush as far as the eye can see. So they're not just clearing brush from your property. They're clearing brush that goes along the edges of the roads, all throughout the entire residential areas. They're essentially removing brush from the entire residential area so that fire that hits the wildfire that hits the mountain doesn't climb up the mountain, head into the residential areas, and just travel and take out all the properties. Okay, so brush reduction certification programs and clearance assistance programs, because clearing brush is not cheap. So look for those things. Tip number 3, fireproof building materials. They exist. They're expensive. They are an investment into your property, but making that initial investment is going to save you long run. There are things like fireproofing decking materials, things you can spray or paint onto your roofing and your siding and things of those nature. So check on fireproofing building materials. My last tip for you is fine mesh vent covers. Now, I want you to really hear me. Vents in your house serve a purpose. There are vents on the top and there are vents on the bottom, and they serve 2 entirely different purposes. The vents on the top sometimes are used for airflow to allow heat to escape through the dwelling. They sometimes work in conjunction with whole house fans. The vents on the bottom are flood vents. They're not for air. They're for water, and they serve a very specific purpose. And if you block those vents from doing what they're designed to do, you can cause yourself to be denied a claim if you need to file a claim. So if you're going to put a fine mesh over your vents, please work with a contractor who is aware of what those vents do, how they work, and what is the proper type of fire prevention mesh that you can put over those vents. Because what that mesh does is stop embers from coming inside the dwelling when they're blowing around, So those are my 4 tips to help you. Hopefully that helps you when you're dealing with underwriting and finding, a better premium or a better policy. Like I said earlier in my disclaimer, I cannot guarantee this is going to drop your premiums, and I cannot guarantee that these things are going to make it so that you can get a new policy, but they help. So there you have it. Have a good day, and I'll see you next week.